Hi, I'm Claire Tansey, food editor at Chatelaine magazine. Today I'm going to share with you my tips and tricks for perfect pastry. Now, pastry can be a little bit intimidating, I know that, but really it's actually quite simple. And I'll tell you, my number one trick is to use your food processor. It takes all of the guesswork out of it, so I highly recommend it. This is what I do at home. Pastry starts with flour. Pastry needs a little bit of sugar, and as with all baking, it needs a little bit of salt. Now at this point you can customize your pastry. I like a little bit of lemon zest and nutmeg. So now that all the dry ingredients are in there, I'm going to give it a quick pulse to combine them all. So now for the fat. When you're making pastry, you have a choice of a number of different things. You can use butter, you can use lard, you can use shortening, and they all give different pastry results. One of my favorites is butter, but one of the easiest to work with is lard. Again, I'm going to pulse it until the lard is in really small pieces. Now this is the final step. A little bit of ice water and a little bit of lemon juice. So now with the lid on, I'm going to add the water just bit by bit and pulse in between. The pastry is starting to come together in big clumps. That's how I know it's ready. But you can see that I didn't actually end up using all of the water. That's totally fine. And even if you find once you take the pastry out of the food processor and it seems a bit dry, you can always sprinkle it with a bit more water. Because I want to make a crust on the top of the pie and on the bottom, I'm going to separate this into two discs. And I want them to be about equal, although it doesn't have to be scientific at this point. Now, another one of the tricks of pastry is you don't really want to touch it too much. Human hands are really warm, and pastry doesn't like warm things. It always likes cold things. That's why you use cold water when you're making it. So I'm going to touch it as little as possible as I'm shaping it into these discs. So now that I've got them in two little discs, I'm going to wrap them in plastic wrap and then just chill them for at least an hour. So the pastry is nicely chilled. Now comes the rolling part. So I'm going to use a good amount of flour. I'm not going to be too stingy with the flour because I can always brush it off. This is all to prevent sticking. Now I like to beat my pastry a little bit. This is just going to get it started. And again, if any rips form at the sides, this is the time to kind of just quickly patch them back together with your fingers. And now just simple rolling. It's kind of like playing with plasticine. You want to make a nice, big, perfect circle. The best way to see if it's big enough is to grab your actual pie dish and kind of set it over. There's lots of room there, so I'm ready to go. To get the pastry into the pan, I like to just use my fingers because I can be really delicate that way. Make sure it's all away from the counter. If you have long nails, be very, very careful. Make sure your pie dish is really close and then just plop it right in. If it rips at all, just patch it back together with your fingers, no problem. Same exact process for the top crust. So I've got a mixture of apples and cinnamon and sugar and all that good stuff that goes into an apple pie, and that goes right in. And one of the tricks of this pie is that it has a little maple syrup glaze, completely optional, but I tell you, it makes this so tasty and a real Canadian twist. Okay, so now the top goes on and it's time to put the pie together. So at this point, there's quite a bit of excess pastry. I'm going to just trim that off. Just kind of lift the pastry towards the center, pinching it a little bit with your fingers at the same time. You want to put a little decorative edge, just use your fingers. I like to kind of pinch it and make the edge a little bit pretty. I'm going to give it a few vent holes, which are going to allow the steam to escape. Another thing you can do to make a pie even more beautiful is to sprinkle it with a bit of sugar before it bakes, and this will make the top kind of shiny and sparkly. Now it's ready to bake. Pies need to bake in the bottom of the oven, well, the bottom rack of the oven. That means that the heat, which comes from the element at the bottom of the oven, is going to cook that pastry from the bottom up, and it's going to cook the apples and the pastry at the same time. So this is just going to go into a nice hot oven right on the bottom rack. I'm starting the pie at 425, but I'm going to reduce it to 350 after 10 minutes, and that's going to help the pie to be really golden on the outside and nice and tender on the inside. Make sure you don't open the oven door when you do it. The pie takes about an hour to an hour and 10 minutes to cook. And what I'm looking for is this beautiful golden edge and a nice golden color across the top of the pie. This pie will keep really well for up to a day, and you can always reheat it and serve it with ice cream.